You are listening to Salty Believer Unscripted, a conversation on Christian ministry and the Christian life.
This is Salty Believer Unscripted. I'm Bryan Catherman, and with me is a friend I've met in Holdridge. It's been a tremendous blessing. Doug Reed from Possibilities Africa. Doug, introduce yourself for us.
Hi. Yeah, Bryan, this is an opportunity that I value, so thank you for letting me just sit down and chat with you a little bit. But my name is Doug Reed, and I'm Managing Director of Possibilities Africa USA. And prior to that, I was a pastor for 21 years. And then prior to that life, I was a farmer for 10 years. So I kind of...
And I'm in your office.
And you're in my old office. I was in this office for 21 years.
And I've been in it for 7 months.
It looks better than when I had it. So, but no, it's been really fun. I enjoyed being a pastor. For that matter, I enjoyed being a farmer too. But really felt God called me into more of a mission role. And that's with Possibilities Africa is something I've been able to invest more of my time and energy in. And spreading the gospel around the world.
That's fantastic. I have some big questions about sort of maybe shifting trends in mission work, or maybe things our listeners have probably never really thought of because we're not in those circles. Yeah. But you are, and I thought I've heard some rumblings and some conversations that I thought if I'm going to ask anybody, I'm going to ask Doug. But before I do that, Josiah and I have mentioned Possibilities Africa on the podcast a couple times. We've seen some things. We're really interested in what you're doing, but I'm guessing most of our listeners haven't. So just give us in a nutshell, like what's Possibilities Africa, and how is it different than, probably the majority of the mission type organizations that are out there?
Yeah. So my role here at the church prior to this job was mainly, my thing I enjoyed was missions and being a missions pastor. And so I got exposed to a lot of different missionaries around the world, and God is using all kinds of people in all kinds of ways. But what I love about Possibilities Africa is started by a Kenyan. And
a Kenyan.
Okay. From Kenya, Africa. And it's a remarkable story. He's just his name is Martin Samuyu. And he was able to come over to the United States and to get a master's at Moody. He got another master's at Biola. But his whole desire is to go back to rural Africa and make a difference in rural African churches by training pastors who have a calling from God, have a church, but they've never had any opportunity to have any formal training.
Right, okay.
And so that just resonated with me. And so we're currently in 8 countries. All of our staff in Africa is born and raised in the country they serve in. Mm-hmm. And so it's they know the language, the culture, and it's just, it's really a cool ministry.
That's outstanding. What's the website for people to find it?
Well, I want to go to our website. We have a website here in the United States, and they have one there, but www.usapossibilitiesafrica.org.
Okay. PossibilitiesAfrica.org. Also, you guys do a podcast.
Yeah, USA.
Oh, Possibilities.
USAPossibilitiesAfrica.org.
Wow, I got that wrong. USAPossibilitiesAfrica.org.
Yes.
Okay. And you're the only full-time guy in the U.S., right?
I'm the only full-time. We have one part-time gal who's doing creative, our creative director, doing an outstanding job. But yeah, just the two of us.
And then everybody else is in Africa.
Everybody else in Africa.
And the goal is to train Africans to reach Africans in Africa.
Exactly.
Okay, that's outstanding. That's why I like it. That's what I've enjoyed sort of seeing that. But that is also why I wanted to have you come chat, because, I'm hearing, I did church planting and indigenous mission work in the United States, in the mission field, that sort of thing. Even in those circles, these little rumblings were coming. But now that I'm here and I'm talking with people about going on mission trips, talking about overseas stuff, the rumblings are different than what I remember when I was a missions pastor many years ago on staff at a church, and it seems different to me. Things are being said like. Or questions are being asked, like, is this the best use of our funds, putting all these people on a plane, sending them over for a week, bringing them back? Wouldn't it be possibly more effective to bring someone over, maybe like Martin, train them up, house them for 2 or 3 years, then send them back, rather than sending all this money to somebody in the field? These are the kind of questions, and I haven't had the opportunity to really think through, what I'm missing, the value of that, and I just wanted to is it a paradigm shift? Are you seeing a paradigm shift in the world of missions right now?
Well, that's a great question. And I think the answer is a soft yes.
A soft yes.
How's that for a firm answer?
A soft yes. Okay.
Soft yes.
That's what you're seeing then.
That's what I'm seeing, though, yeah. And I think I want to be careful not to put God in a box.
Right.
Because obviously God does and can use anybody that he puts his mind to.
And we have biblical examples of that.
Yeah. Let me give you an example of the Apostle Paul. I mean, the Apostle Paul was someone who he wanted to go and be a pioneer for the ministry. One of the verses that comes to mind is Romans 15:20, and it says, "Thus I make it my ambition to preach the gospel, not where Christ has already been named, lest I build on someone else's foundation." And so he had this desire to go where no one else had gone before.
Yeah. So they weren't going, to Corinth and getting a guy and bringing him back to Jerusalem to learn and train and then send him back to Corinth. Paul just went there.
He just went there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so there's a place for us to go to countries that have never heard. I mean, like, who are you going to go train there? They're like in Africa, where we currently work, there's believers, pastors that are Christians that have a little bit of knowledge. And so for us to train them, it's just really cost effective, and it's very, very effective overall.
Because you can do it where they live.
Where they live. Yeah. And sometimes when you bring them, it's not, I mean, Martin, for example, when he came over, it's not wrong to bring somebody over here, but a lot of times they don't go back.
Right. They end up they connect, they form networks. That's the same problem in church planting.
Yeah.
That was a problem we had in Utah. You'd send people off to seminary, then they'd never come back to Utah.
Yeah, and that's not wrong.
No, but it is a little hard when you put that kind of investment in it and then they don't come back.
Exactly. And so, like, Martin would say that, like, a lot of times he doesn't really want to send people over here to get trained because of that concern of them not coming back. He would rather invest in training them there, and then they stay there.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, there's a lot of really good theologians in Africa in the big cities.
Okay.
But just not in the rural areas. And that's why our whole ministry right now is to rural areas.
Just because that's the most underserved?
Underserved, by far.
So, but in this paradigm shift maybe, or in this, at least what you guys are doing, you're saying, look, we're going to find the most cost-effective ways to reach the people in the right ways, and that for you is to do training in these rural areas to train people who are there. So are you bringing in Americans to do that training? Are you training them with these good theologians in the big cities? What does that look like?
I asked Martin that. I often ask Martin that because sometimes we'll take people over, pastors, theologians, to train. And he said it's okay. He's not against it. But he said sometimes when we leave, we use illustrations and things that after we leave, they have to explain what they were.
Oh,
like, this is what he meant when he said this or this.
There's still contextualization problems.
Exactly. Now, now, again, not wrong. It's just maybe not the most effective. And so, like I said, we have some he's got connections. So Martin was a pastor in Nairobi, Kenya before starting this ministry.
Okay.
And so he has a lot of really, really solid connections with theologians that love to go teach. And so that's our primary way. But there's times, where we'll take pastors here or even businessmen to go over and maybe teach some business principles.
Okay, because they're starting, that's a part of what you're doing,
so
get them to start businesses.
I didn't really explain the whole thing of what we do. So one is train pastors.
Yeah.
And the second thing is we help these pastors, leaders start small businesses to support their families. They're so poor. There's a misconception, or wrong teaching in Africa that pastors can only be pastors. They can't have any other income from anything else.
Oh, really?
And so
no bivocational anything.
No. And what the reason is they want them to focus. I think the intent was good. They want them to focus on being a pastor, but that doesn't work in a third world country where the average person lives on less than $2 a day.
Well, it doesn't even work we're in rural Nebraska, and a lot of these very small towns. My son and I just drove through a very small town north of here, and there's like 3 churches there. There's a school. There's really there's not even a grocery store.
Yeah.
So that pastor probably is also a farmer or something. I don't know how they could. That's just the situation, right?
Well, go back to the Apostle Paul again. He was a tent maker.
At times. Sometimes he was fully supported. Sometimes he had to do that. So you got both.
Yeah. And so there's nothing wrong,
Yeah.
Biblically wrong with having a job and then being a pastor, but then having a little income to support your family.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of these pastors, when they feel God calling in the ministry, there's this mourning process of, man, we're living in poverty. And then even the extended family is kind of mourning it because they know we're going to have to support this pastor because he can't have any other.
Man.
But these businesses that we help them start, they're micro businesses. They're a cow, they're a garden, sewing machine. So they can still be a full-time pastor, but it just provides, they can put food on the table.
So in our culture, it's kind of like having a side hustle.
Yeah.
A little side gig of
just
some kind.
Something, yeah.
To keep the food on the table.
The third thing we do is we challenge them to educate the next generation.
Okay.
And value children. The mortality rate in Africa is extremely high. A lot of times children are not named until they're a year old.
Because they die?
Because they die.
Oh, man.
It's really sad. But yet sometimes children aren't invested in like they are here. And so we really believe that the next generation, so both, we need to train them spiritually and just educationally. And so those are the three things. Training pastors, helping them start small businesses, and educating children.
Okay, so the concept then, and correct me where I might have this wrong, the idea then is if you train up the pastor will then teach biblical principles and Christianity and do the evangelism and all that so that the church itself is taking care of the widows and the orphans and helping instead of, it's going to sound like a big judgment statement. And maybe it's deserved, maybe it's not. Instead of bringing over, 15 Americans to build an orphanage and then leave it, and then go, you're saying, no, you want to have the church doing that work more so than people coming in from outside to do that work.
Yeah, exactly. I think, Brian, it's just, so you nailed it, and I want to re-say it again. So we teach the pastors, knowing that we can't teach everybody. Like we only have 22 staff in Africa. But we train pastors, and then they're required to be a part of our 2-year program. They're required to go back to their churches and teach the congregation what they've learned.
Oh, okay.
So Bible, theology, help start small businesses. And
right.
So this multiplication process is happening. And that's just so important. And like it was fascinating. One of the pastors we met, he felt so bad that he hadn't been able to get licensed for an orphanage to bring in like lots of kids. And then we met another pastor who he brought in like 4 or 5 orphans into his family.
Oh, like just took them in.
Just took them in.
Okay.
And really, the more we thought about it, what a great way just to live a family life instead of an orphanage.
Yeah.
Now orphanage isn't wrong.
Right.
And so a lot of times.
And then more people in the church start thinking like that, and then pretty soon it's
hey,
different
just
thing.
come live with us. Instead of having this big orphanage. And so that's one of the things that we teach is what about, these orphans, just bringing them into a family. And
well, so I heard this thing, and it really struck me. I went to the Possibilities Africa banquet this year, and Martin was there, and he had said, everybody wants to donate Bibles and give Bibles to the people in Africa. And I thought, man, that sounds great. And he, having the context and the understanding, said, no, we sell them a Bible for some amount of money because there's a handout culture that I say we, maybe Americans, maybe Westerners, but there's been this whole concept of, we've just trained everybody to take a handout. And he's saying we have to teach them to think differently because he's in the context. Mm-hmm. And so really what you're saying is, it's good that we want to help, but maybe we're not helping well. Would you say that's maybe the way to think about it? Yeah,
Martin and I actually butted heads a little bit when I first started because he has seen the effects of the handout mentality.
Yeah.
And what happens is people, they're not taking ownership of their problem. They're waiting for somebody else to come fix it.
Yeah.
So they're just idly waiting. But then there's really not much dignity in that. There's not, and quite honestly, there's a lot of people waiting because, we might go over and help a few people in the front of the line, but the thousands of them behind them, we can't.
And we're there for 5 days.
And we're 5 days and gone. But back to your Bible illustration, we butted heads because I said, Martin, we can at least give away a Bible.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, you know what? If they pay a little bit for it, they will
cherish it. That's what he said. It struck me. Yeah.
And it's like something to value. And I never thought about that much, and I still kind of rubs me a little bit wrong.
Oh, it shocked me. I was sitting there going, wait a minute. As a guy who gave away hundreds and hundreds of Bibles in Utah, just gave them away. Sure. It shocked me, and then I realized something, and I think this is why I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah.
I am not one in that context.
That's
so
right.
Who am I to say what's the better way to handle it? I don't know.
And it might have been okay in Utah.
Yeah.
Totally.
He wasn't. I don't think he was making a statement everywhere.
No, it wasn't. That's not the culture. But over there, this culture of a handed mentality has done more harm than good. And so we push back against that. There's so many ways that we put. It's just so hard. And what I love about Martin, he's African.
And passionate.
And he can say the hard things.
Yeah. I'm
a Western. If I go over and say those hard things, it comes across pretty rude because I'm really wealthy.
You're an outsider, right?
I'm an outsider.
Yeah.
Any American, wealth, I'll just go down a little rabbit trail here.
Go for it.
Wealth, and we are so stinking wealthy here.
Yep.
It's unbelievable. And most people don't even understand it. But if you're going to line up 100 people that represented every person in the world, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you have 100 people, and this represents everybody on earth. United States, Western United Statesers would be number 99 and number 100 in this, and the average
which is funny because people in the West are like, the 1%ers and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, all of us are the 1%ers.
Exactly. So it's, and so like when we go over there, there's this expectation of we're going to give them things.
Yeah.
But it's really been a harmful thing. Even some, very good intentions of, so let's send over some clothes. Yeah. Sometimes they get these, shipping containers full of clothes. What that does is the local people who make clothes, that puts them out of business. Just a simple thing like that.
Which you don't think about unless you live there and you're in the context. Okay, so then that brings me to this. Probably be about all we have time for, but does this mean we shouldn't be sending people over on 1 week mission trip? What would you say to the person that says, if it's not going to be that valuable, then we absolutely shouldn't do it, or should we do it? What do we do with that?
Yeah, this is a great question. When I was here at the church, I took people on mission trips all the time, and really around the world. And so there's value in it, but I think it has to be really strategic. My main goal in taking someone on a mission trip is first and foremost not to hurt the gospel and not to screw things up for them. Then to come alongside somebody who's going to be there. I'm not called like Paul was, I think, to be a pioneer missionary.
Just go where there's nothing.
No, that's not my calling. My calling, I think, is come alongside somebody who is. And so I think if we go, the other wrong thinking is going as, we're the great white American.
We're going to fix all your problems and you need everything we have.
It's kind of like Reagan's quote, I'm here for the government, I'm here to help, or something like that, I think we need to go as a learner.
Yeah.
And we go, what can we learn from you? And we have a lot of money, but you know what? There's a lot of people in third world countries that have happiness that we don't, or satisfaction that we don't.
Yeah, or
even spiritual, connected to the Holy Spirit in ways that maybe we're not. So we can learn from them, but it's a mutual back and forth. Mm-hmm. And so there's a place for it, but I think it has to be really thought through well. And there's also a value to some of our best supporters of Possibilities Africa are the ones who have gone on mission trips.
And saw it.
They saw it. It works.
Or you went on a short-term mission trip, and that's what gave you the heart for mission work, right?
Well, it is. Can I tell that story real quick?
Yeah, I think so.
So, back in 1987, which you were not too old.
I was young. You're old, Doug.
I'm old. I got gray. If you can only see my gray hair. So I went on a mission trip with Campus Crusade for Christ, now called Crew.
Yeah.
And I went to Africa, went to Kenya, and we showed the Jesus film, which is a great tool. God used it tremendously. And we showed it to lots and lots of people. And there was a team of 5 of us and lived in a village where had no running water, no electricity. But just our team of 5 people, we saw over 4,000 people come forward to raise their hands.
Because you do like some kind of an invitation
to receive Christ.
Receive Christ. Yep.
But my big concern was I would see these pastors and they had no training. I said, who disciples these people?
What happens now?
And how many times have they raised their hands?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and so I thought at that time, I was 20, probably 2. I said, we need
And you're a farmer.
And I'm a farmer.
I mean, like...
I'm a farm kid.
Yeah.
But I said, we need to train these pastors. But the thing was, I didn't know the language. I didn't know the culture. I didn't have a seminary degree at the time.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do with that. And so fast forward to 2019, I hear about Martin Simeou, and he's training pastors.
Yeah.
And that's what fires my motivation, is something God used a long time ago.
You had been you had gone on a mission trip.
And
it's hard to say, let's throw the whole thing out.
You can't.
It does stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
It does.
I took a team, before I ever planted a church, I took a team of young people to a missions week at Gateway. Back then it was Golden Gate Baptist Theological Seminary. And they did like lecture stuff on missions, and then you went out and did these firsthand things. And we went and worked with the church planter, and it fired up a lot of people. Like, wait, I've never seen this, and that's not going overseas on a short-term mission trip, but it's still, we went and worked. And then we were there for 4 days or whatever, and then we went home. But it moved, and some of those people that went with me ended up planting a church, either with me or they're working in other. I mean, a couple of them are ministers today. Like that, there's value, but it might not necessarily be value on the ground. It's value in the hearts of the people that are going.
That's the key. I think God does more in our heart.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously He can do over there too, wherever you go. But really, it's about changing.
So you don't want to throw that out.
No.
I mean, you don't want to throw that out, but you have to be aware that you could be hurting.
Yeah, and that's why I started with a soft yes.
Yeah.
Because God can use anything, and He does. I mean, I have friends that are going to areas in the 1040 window that there's no witness there, and praise God, they're willing to go.
Which hard. I mean, that's hard work, right? That's
and we need to be praying
difficult
for them, because it is not easy. I mean, it is hard work, and sometimes very, very little fruit, but they're still where God calls them.
Right, and that we've got to be faithful.
Yeah.
So it might not look the way we want to design it to look, but we have to be faithful to what we know God is calling us to.
And I think that's just being in touch with the Holy Spirit. Okay, God, what are you calling me to do? So Doug, we got to wrap this thing up, but I have some quick questions for you. Let's say there are people listening, they're going, so they want to go to the website, that'd be the first place, usapossibilitiesafrica.org. Yeah.
Pastors might be listening, do you travel around? Do you talk with people? What can people do if they're interested in what you're doing?
Yeah. Thanks for that. I love to talk to anybody. And my philosophy is I love sharing the story because it's a God story. And then it's between God and them. I'm really not a high pressure salesman.
I sat with you at McDonald's and it was just really fun and exciting, and there was no pressure at all. It was me pressuring you to answer more questions.
Yeah, it's really, I just want to share the story, and then, some people say, hey, it's a great fit, we'd like to be a part of it. And others like, you know what, we have some other ministries we're supporting. I'm totally good with that. But I love sharing the story. I'll travel. My territory is the United States.
Okay.
And so, it's not, might need to line it up a few months.
So you're looking for somebody in Hawaii to invite you and your wife to come out and speak.
Go. Yes, absolutely. But, I love filling the pulpit if I have that opportunity, sharing the Sunday school classes, individuals, whatever. So, that's what I do. And it's really fun. It's fun to see how God is using me over here to accomplish what He's accomplishing over there. And they don't really need me over there, although I take people on mission trips over there. Mm-hmm. Like I'll go the end of February, I'm taking a group of 10 people.
But based on what we just talked about, it's mostly a come and see, come and learn, not come and do. So
that's right. Yeah, it is, and that's what people need to know. But that's, and I don't know how quick we need to wrap this up, but there's a quote from John Piper.
I was actually thinking, I saw you pull that out. Let's just leave our listeners with that.
Okay.
Let's just let them meditate on that.
I love this quote from John Piper, and it's from the book Let the Nations Be Glad. He says, missions is not the ultimate goal of the church. Worship is. Missions exist because worship doesn't. Worship is ultimate, not missions, because God is ultimate, not man. When this age is over and the countless millions of redeemed fall on their faces before the throne of God, missions will be no more. It is a temporary necessity, but worship abides forever. And I just want to finish. I'll finish my part with this verse in Revelation 7, 9, and 10. It says this, after this I looked, and behold, a great multitude that no one could number, from every nation, from all tribes and peoples and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes, with palm branches in their hands, and crying out with a loud voice, salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb.
That is so good. Doug, thanks for being here. And to our listeners, thanks for listening. Till next time.
Thanks for listening. Salty Believer Unscripted is a production of SaltyBeliever.com. Visit the website to find more resources like the podcast you've just listened to.